If you're trying to get freelance clients online, it seems like no matter where you turn, everyone is teaching you how to build your personal brand. They say you need to tell stories, use psychology hacks, provide value. But there's a problem. Most of that misses the point because your personal brand is simply this: it's what people think of when they think of you. That's it. I've been a freelance consultant for over 20 years, and for the past decade, 100% of my work has come because of my personal brand. If you want to build a personal brand that gets you clients, here's what works. Number one, don't pose. Don't pretend to be something you're not. You might think that attracting clients is about looking impressive, wowing people with what you can do. Years ago, when I was first starting out, I just built websites. I remember feeling uneasy because I didn't have a computer science degree. All I had was an English degree and a law degree. As it turned out, my academic background became an interesting point of conversation when I met with a potential client. I didn't pretend like I was anyone else than who I was. Instead of pretending to be someone you're not, just think two simple thoughts. Number one, here's who I am. This is me. And number two, here's what I do. In other words, let people get to know you and let them know what you're working on. Show actual work examples. For example, if you're designing a report, you can talk about the functional choices you made, why you chose this particular visual, why you chose this particular filter or slicer. You can talk about the aesthetic choices you made, colors, layout, if you use particular assets. You can talk about performance. Sometimes, depending on how you design the report and what kind of assets you use, that will determine how well the report performs. Maybe you build applications. In that case, you can talk about the programming language you use or a particular framework you're using in building the application. You can also talk about any UI or UX considerations that you've made. Or maybe you're building a data model. You can talk about the schema. If you've chosen the star schema or the snowflake schema. You can talk about if you have implemented any row-level security, or if you had to use any bridge tables. Talk about the data pipeline that you're using to get the data into the data model. Gary Vaynerchuk would say it this way: document, don't create. And if you think of it this way, it actually becomes easy because you're just showing what you're already doing. Now, if you think of it as creating, the temptation there, it's to embellish, to create a fictional account of yourself. In other words, where you want to be instead of where you are now. Here's the key. Don't talk about where you want to be, because when you get there someday, it won't look like you've made any progress. Also, when you're talking about what you do, you don't have to get into the weeds. Remember, you're in the deep end, but your potential clients, they're just dipping their toes in the water. Pay attention to their language so that when you speak, you use their language. If you start using jargon, you're going to scare off your potential clients because this makes them feel ignorant, and nobody wants to feel ignorant. Years ago, I was working on building an application that was pulling together data from multiple data sources. And the way I thought of that was data integration, bringing everything together in a single source of truth. I was speaking the language of the technology or the language of my industry. That was a very different language than what my client was speaking. My client was saying things like compiling data or collecting data. Now, fortunately, I had a previous relationship with that client, so it didn't scare them off. But if we're a new client, it might have sounded scary to them. And the thing about scared clients is they don't buy. Now, maybe you haven't done anything yet. That's okay. Just do something and then show what you've done, even if it's just a sample project. Remember, you don't need to pose. You just need to show what you've done. Number two, don't flex. Don't just show your highlight reel. It can be really tempting to want people to think that you hit a home run every time you're up to bat. But first of all, no one likes a show off. Secondly, no one knocks it out of the park every single time. Even the most successful people in the whole world have a long list of failures. I'm currently working with a large client, and there's about a dozen developers on the team that I interact with daily. These developers are not all experts. They are working through issues and they're figuring stuff out every single day. Believe me, their day-to-day is not one long highlight reel. I'm the technical lead on the Power BI embedded project that we're doing. We're migrating from a different business intelligence platform to Power BI embedded. I may be seen as the expert, but there are issues that I've run into as well. Issues that I've had to figure out. Yes, I'm the consultant, but there's no expectation that I instantly solve every single issue. My client just wants to know that I can solve the issues and that I will solve the issues, but I don't have to have everything figured out instantly. So instead of acting like you have no weaknesses, just say, here's what I'm learning. Here are some issues that I ran into. Talk about how you work through those issues. Share something you figured out along the way. Or maybe you're still working through the issues, and that's okay. Show how you're still working through the issues. On this current Power BI embedded project I'm on, one of the things that I ran into was that scheduled refresh wasn't working. We had moved our databases from on-prem into Azure, and I had been working on many different parts of the project, but I finally got to the scheduled refresh and I couldn't get it to work. I double checked and I triple checked the credentials. I kept testing. Everything looked correct, but it kept failing. It wouldn't connect to the database. I didn't know that for this particular database, we need a data gateway. We need to set up a data gateway in Azure. Hey, I learned something new. It can be tempting to want to be seen as the hero, as if you got it all figured out. But if you think of it this way, what does that make your client? If you're the hero, what does that make your client? You want your client to feel like the hero. You're going to win a lot more clients if you are willing to assume the role of the trusted guide. And sometimes the guide is just the one who figures it out. The one who leads your client through the challenges, not the one who always has all the answers. Remember, your role is to serve your client, to make them look good. If you're worried more about how you look, you're not going to win many clients. There's a scripture I love in Matthew chapter 20, verse 26, where Jesus said, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." If you want to build a strong personal brand, become the person who shows up to serve others, not someone who shows off. And number 3, don't idealize. Don't act as if you're perfect and you've got everything together. Your North Star in building a personal brand is to get people to know, like, and trust you. The truth is, no one likes a know-it-all. If you develop content that teaches, this can sometimes be a trap. So instead of always trying to teach, share your resources. You might think it sounds smart if you say something as if you came up with it all by yourself, but you actually sound smarter if you quote someone else. You can say, here's what I learned from this person, or here's what I learned from this article, or here's something I picked up from this video, and go ahead and share those resources. The humility that gets communicated will do far more for your personal brand than any amount of knowledge you could show off. Currently, I'm working with a client, and the IT director on the project recently shared that there's a YouTube channel he found that's dedicated to this specific database that we're using on a project. He said he watches a new video every week to learn. He could have kept that to himself and just spouted off the information he got from the videos as if he just knew it all along. What's the principle? The principle is humility wins respect. In this case, this gave me even more respect for someone I already had a lot of respect for. And here's a bonus tip. If you're going to share something you learned from someone else, give them credit, but then put your own spin on it. Myron Golden has a story he tells. He talks about how Abraham Lincoln said, "I will prepare, and someday my chance will come." But Myron says, what he would say is, whether or not you're prepared, your chance will come. And when it comes, it will either expose you or reveal you. So when Myron quotes Abraham Lincoln, it actually makes him sound pretty smart. But then when he puts his own spin on what Abraham Lincoln said, that makes him sound even smarter. Another way you can share your resources is just to connect your potential client with someone who can help them. In the city where I live, years ago, we had this huge storm in October, a snowstorm that took out power across almost the entire city. My client's servers were down, and they were connected to the Treasury. They were connected to US Customs. Their clients relied on them to be up 24/7 to make sure those shipments could keep coming in across the border. But their servers are completely down. A colleague of mine owned a high availability data center that had stayed online during the whole storm. So I made a phone call to connect my client, and then I let my colleague handle everything. I just stepped out of the way. For the next decade, my client would bring that up and remind me again and again of that time that, as he put it, I pulled a rabbit out of the hat. I didn't even do anything. All I did was make a phone call, and I let my colleague handle all of that. More than 20 years later, that client is still my client. Remember, your personal brand is what people think of when they think of you. This is what my client thought of every time they thought of me, because your personal brand is really just who you are. And maybe you're not who you want to be. And that's okay. If that's the case, think about what you can do today to become the person. Ultimately, building a personal brand should be about getting people to become Team You, people who are fans of you, people who support you, people who want to be around you, people who will choose you whenever they need help on a project. If you need help getting started or growing as a freelancer, there's a link in the description. You can fill out a form. I'll be in touch. And if it makes sense, we can jump on a call and see if there might be an opportunity to work together. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.